Well, I'm glad we're all back together this afternoon and really excited for the sessions this afternoon. We have a couple new folks here from the agency, and they're going to be talking to you about accountability and the future of accountability in Texas. You know how important that is, especially going forward. And then also as it relates to CTE. So first I have Heather Smalley is here, and what she does at the agency is she provides support to Texas Public Schools in the Division of Performance Reporting. She has 22 years of experience in public education in areas such as the classroom teaching, in grants and audits, state and federal education policy, and accountability. And she'll be co-presenting with Christopher Lucas. He's the Director of Policy Development and Communications in the Division of Performance Reporting. He oversees the team that is responsible for guiding policymakers and for making sure that all stakeholders understand and can make use of the state's academic accountability system. Chris formerly worked at TEA in the Instructional Materials and Educational Technology Division as the Director of Textbook Review and Adoption. And so they're going to lay the groundwork on accountability. And then yesterday you met the Executive Director of Department of College, Career, and Military Prep, Quentin Soufren. And so he'll come up at the end and kind of bring it all together and tell you how it all relates to CTE specifically. So let's give our presenters a warm welcome, please.
Good afternoon. So thank you for having us. Chris and I work in accountability at the Texas Education Agency, and I always like to say it's an exciting time in accountability. Sometimes people get mad at me when I say that. But it really is, because we are in the process of switching to a whole brand new accountability system. So today we're going to give you a broad overview of accountability as it is today. And then we're going to give you an overview of the changes that are coming. Chris and I are going to kind of tag team as we go through this presentation. We're going to have a chance for questions as we transition from present to future, and then again at the end of the presentation. So if you have any questions, just let us know. Our current accountability system has 2 ratings, and those indicate either acceptable or unacceptable performance. And an acceptable performance has a rating of either met standard or met alternative standard. And the met alternative standard is assigned to districts or charter districts that serve students that are in at-risk situations that provide alternative education settings. And the label that indicates unacceptable performance is improvement required. We currently have a system that has a 4 index. It has 4 indexes. Index 1 is student achievement, and it provides a snapshot of student performance across all subject areas. And in summary, that is passing. Did the students pass the STAR test? Index 2 is student progress, and that is looking at students who met the progress measure on the STAR test or the ELL progress measure on the STAR test. Index 3 is closing performance gaps, and that is where we're looking at the academic achievement of socioeconomic students, low socioeconomic students, and the 2 lowest performing sub-pops from the year before. And Index 4 is post-secondary readiness. And guess where CTE is reflected? Post-secondary readiness. Post-secondary readiness emphasizes the role of elementaries and middle schools in preparing students for high school, and at high schools for preparing students for post-secondary career, post-secondary college opportunities, and the military. Index 1 covers all subjects on the STAR, and it combines them across all subject areas, and it awards credit for meeting level 2 satisfactory standard, which is the passing standard. And the tests that we look at are the STAR A, the STAR Alt 2, and the STAR L through the ELL progress measure. Index 2 includes 10 student groups. It combines reading and math, and it awards 1 point for meeting the STAR or ELL progress measure, and an additional point for exceeding the STAR or the ELL progress measure. Index 3 focuses on the performance of economically disadvantaged students and the 2 lowest performing racial or ethnic groups from the prior year. It combines all subject areas, and again, it's 1 point for meeting level 2 satisfactory standard, and then 1 point for meeting level 3 advanced standard. Index 4 looks at STAR post-secondary readiness, which is the final level 2 standard. It looks at high school graduation rates, high school diploma plans, and then additional post-secondary indicators, college-ready graduates, the advanced dual credit course credit, and enrollment in a coherent sequence of CTE courses. And Index 4 for elementaries and middle schools only is going to have the STAR component to that. High schools is going to have, they're going to have all 4 of those components in their rating. That's what the next slide says. All 4 components are strictly just the STAR component. Index targets for 2016, in order to meet a MET standard or a MET alternative standard rating, a district or campus must have met targets on at least 3 out of the 4 indices. So they could meet Index 1 or Index 2 and Index 3 and Index 4.
Can I jump in for a second
Yep.
here? Essentially what this plan is saying, only having to meet either Index 1 or Index 2, is that campuses and districts are held responsible for closing performance gaps for post-secondary readiness, and then either for student performance or student growth. Is another way to look at.
Yes, because some schools may struggle with the passing rate, but their students are making progress, and so they can meet standard by showing student progress. I'm not going to read you the index targets, but every year the index targets are set. They're set by index and then for the district and by campus type. So elementary, middle school, and high school, or K-12, have different index scores that they need to meet. And we were talking about AEA, alternative education, just a minute ago. They have separate targets. They're rated on a separate system that looks at the type of campus they are, the type of district they are, that they serve alternative, they provide alternative education, they serve students who are at risk of dropping out of school. What is AEA? It is alternative measures that are applied to campuses that offer non-traditional programs. Sometimes people ask what it is. I said a lot of times it's a dropout recovery center. It's really targeted at keeping students in school, getting them toward graduation. Our number one most frequently asked question is, will this student be included in my accountability? We have something that's called the accountability subset, and if you have worked with testing at all, you know people ask, is this child who just moved into my district going to be held, am I going to be held accountable for them in accountability? We have what's called the accountability subset, and a student, in order to be included in your calculations, needs to have been there on PEIMS Fall Snapshot Day and Testing Day, those 2 days. So if you have a student who's there on snapshot date, but not there on testing day, you're not going to get that student's accountability. Same thing if they're there on testing date, but weren't there on fall snapshot, that will not be included in your accountability. We have 2 levels of that. We have a campus subset and a district subset. So if you have children who have moved within your district from campus to campus, they won't be on your campus subset, but they would meet your district subset. So you would see their results at the district level.
So the one thing I just wanted to make sure is clear, when she says student is there on the snapshot date and not there on the testing date, she's meaning enrolled. She doesn't mean the student just happens to be absent on the testing date.
Yes. So having them just not show up for fall snapshot isn't going to work. You're still reporting them in PEIMS. Trust us. We have gotten some questions that are like, so if we're on to you. We have distinction designations, which are gold stars. On the accountability summary, there are gold stars reflected, and they are for going above and beyond in certain areas. And they are awarded to districts and to campuses. And first of all, to be eligible for a distinction designation, you need to have had a MET standard rating. Districts and campuses that are rated using AEA provisions are not eligible for distinction designations. And one of my favorite things that we do is work with campus comparison groups. So in order to be evaluated for distinction designations, we put all campuses, we put them together with 40 other similar campuses across the state based on the size, the mobility, the ELLs, and the economically disadvantaged served on that campus. As as educators, we have a tendency to look at the district right next to us and compare how we're doing to them, but they may not truly reflect your demographics. So we take campuses from across the state and put them in a campus comparison group, and we compare your performance to similar campuses to you to determine whether or not you're going to receive a distinction designation.
So to add something really interesting about that, or something that I think is incredibly interesting, for those of you that are mathematically inclined, the formula we use to determine campus comparison groups is called the Euclidean distance formula. In case you're mathematically inclined, that's how we do it. It's described in the accountability manual.
I am not a math person, so I would never have gotten that. So the areas that we award distinction designations are English language arts, mathematics, science, social studies, student progress, closing performance gaps, and post-secondary readiness, which should be of interest to anyone in CTE. Districts may be awarded distinction designations just in the area of post-secondary readiness. We include currently, in the current system, UC-CTE reflected in Index 4, because we look at the coherent sequence of CTE courses, and that's reported in the PEIMS 400 and 101 records. And I'm just going to take the opportunity to say, please make friends with your PEIMS person in your district. I cannot emphasize enough how important a clean, accurate PEIMS submission is. A lot of the data that we get and we run come straight out of PEIMS. And a lot of the questions we get after we have issued distinction designations or ratings is, that doesn't match what I have. It comes down to, a lot of times it was a PEIMS reporting error. The program people have this record, but the PEIMS people entered something else. So really partner up with your PEIMS people to make sure that you're getting a good, clean PEIMS submission that accurately reflects your records as a program person.
And for those of you, those PEIMS folks, should there be any in the room, we identify these kids from, it's specifically the 101 record, code table ID C142. We take kids that are coded either as 2 or 3 in that code table.
Yeah, PEIMS is like a foreign language. If you don't work in PEIMS, it's kind of like Portuguese. So sometimes as a program person, you have to go to the PEIMS person and say, this is what I need, and they have to tell you, this is where we're going to put it. Post-secondary readiness distinction designation also reflects the coherent sequence of CTE courses. Again, a good, clean PEIMS submission. I cannot tell you how many more calls this year we got about distinction designations than we did about actual ratings. And we, would dig through with the people, and they would come down and say, well, I had this many CTE kids, they're not reflected in this report. And we would dig through it, and we would find it was a PEIMS reporting error. So partner up with your PEIMS person. The 2016 Accountability Manual. We have an accountability manual that we publish every year. It is 175 pages this year. You do not have to read every single page of the accountability manual if you are not in charge of accountability for your district. But I would encourage you as CTE people to look at the manual and look at the sections that specifically deal with CTE to know exactly how your work is being reflected in accountability. And I have the website that's up there. We publish it every spring for public comment. So we would love to have your feedback on the CTE portions of the manual. Questions? Yes, ma'am.
That was for this year?
It is, yes, perfect. Good question. So that, a lot of what I talked about was for 2016, the ratings that just came out. We're in the process of getting 2017 underway. We are not switching over yet to A through F. We're currently running a very similar accountability system that we had in 2016. We're meeting with our accountability advisory committees currently, and then February, the commissioner will issue final decisions for 2017 accountability. We don't anticipate a lot of changes because we're going to make a big change the next year. So what we went over should be very reflective of 2017.
So isn't there something in the Index 4 about certifications?
That's in Domain 4. It's in the new system.
It's coming. Yes, good question. Any other questions?
So now we'll talk about what's coming in the future. So the future of accountability was established by House Bill 2804 by the 84th Texas Legislature in 2015. And it had three big parts to it, or it did three main things. And I'll touch on one of them very quickly, and then we'll look at the other two in depth and compare them to what Heather just talked about. One of the things it did, and the one we'll just touch on briefly, is created what's called the Texas Commission on Next Generation Assessments and Accountability. This is a 15-member commission that is made up of appointees from the governor's office, the lieutenant governor's office, the Speaker of the House. It's made up of a few legislators and a member of the State Board of Education. What their task was to make recommendations for new generation assessments and accountability systems. The commission met 7 times, once a month, January through July. They sent their report to the legislature on August 31st. It's available on the TEA website if you're interested. It's available for anyone to see. One of the other things it did is it changed the rating labels. So currently and in 2017, there'll be Met Standard or Met Alternative Standard and Improvement Required. Those are the two that show acceptable and then unacceptable performance. Beginning with the 2017-2018 school year, the ratings will be A, B, C, D, or F. Districts and campuses will receive an A, B, C, D, or F for domains 1, 2, 3, 4, and overall. The grade for domain 5 we'll go over in just a little bit. And I want to make sure as I go through this, there's a lot of details about this system that have not yet been worked out. Building an accountability system, as you can imagine, is very complex and it takes a lot of time. So we're going to tell you what we know. There may be a lot that decisions just haven't been made yet. The other thing it did, so we said that House Bill 2804 had 3 main parts, or did 3 main things. There was the Texas Commission, there was changing the ratings from Met Standard to A through F, and then also shifts from 4 indices to 5 domains. You'll notice the first 4 domains are very close to the 4 indices that we have now. And then domain 5 is community and student engagement ratings. These are the same community and student engagement ratings that we've had since House Bill 5, but with 2804, they're treated a little bit differently and they're done. They have a slightly different purpose, so we'll have to go through all of that because unless the statute is changed, districts are going to be doing 2 completely different things with community and student engagement ratings at the same time. So we'll spend a little bit of time on that later. So domain 1 is still student achievement. It's measured at the percentage of students who meet the STAR satisfactory standard, that's the level 2 standard, and then also the STAR college readiness standard. That's I think right now it's called final level 2. This domain 1 differs from index 1 because it brings in the college readiness standard into index 1. Remember, into domain 1, excuse me. You'll remember that the college readiness standard in the current index is currently in index 4. So 2804 moves it from index 4 to domain 1. Domain 2 is still student progress. It's progress measure expectations for the STAR satisfactory standard and then also for the STAR college readiness standard. Again, this one differs from index 2 that we have now because index 2 doesn't look at the college readiness standard, but domain 2 will. Domain 3. I don't like to read verbatim what's on the slide, but I'm going to here to make a point. Academic achievement differentials among students from different racial and ethnic groups and socioeconomic backgrounds. That's the only thing that's in law about domain 3. So it's going to be closing performance gaps, but there was a lot left, a lot of flexibility left in constructing domain 3. Domain 4 is post-secondary readiness. And this, again, just like it is in Index 4, is where CTE will be in a couple different ways. There are different indicators for different school types. So for districts and high schools, there's the dropout rate, the graduation rate, college and career readiness indicator, which we'll go over in a minute, and then other indicators as determined by the commissioner. So 2804 gave the commissioner authority for each, in domain 4, for each school type, to come up with any other indicators that he or she thought would be helpful. To this point, I don't know that there are any other indicators for domain 4 for districts or high schools, but like I said before, there's a lot of decisions that have yet to be made. The college and career readiness indicator from domain 4 that we talked about there, the third bullet, it's based on the percentage of students who do at least one of these things. So it's OR logic. Distinguished level of achievement under the Foundation High School program, an endorsement under the Foundation High School program, complete a coherent sequence of CTE courses, that's the exact same indicator that's in Index 4 now, satisfy the Texas Success Initiative benchmark, earn at least 12 hours of post-secondary credit, complete an AP course, or earn an industry certification. There's more to say about the industry certification in a little bit. Well, no, it's now time to say more about it.
Ta-da!
On September 14th, the agency released a letter to district administrators, and it requests that districts and charter school campuses submit a list of industry-based third-party certifications that they award to their students. The submission deadline is October 21st, 2016. And some of the information may already be collected if what you've already sent through the Perkins PER, if that's a complete list of all the industry certifications that you offer to your students, then you don't need to do that again. We already have that information, but I would make sure that that's a comprehensive list. It will help you all, for us to have as many of these industry certifications as possible. So the agency is really relying on the field to tell us what's out there. And then Quentin will talk a little bit more about what's going to happen with that information once we get it. And again, this information will be used to determine the eligibility for Domain 4 credit. So Domain 4 in middle schools and junior highs has fewer indicators. It's student attendance, dropout rate, student receiving instructions in preparing for high school, college, and career, and then other indicators as determined by the commissioner. The third bullet there, students receiving instruction in preparing for high school, college, and career, is actually a legal requirement. Districts have to do it. It was passed, I believe, at the 84th legislature. I'm thinking House Bill 18, but I could be wrong about that. But anyway, that's a requirement. So that's really not, one would not think that's going to be much of a differentiator if everyone is required to do it. The other indicators is determined by the commissioner. There has been a few things discussed. I think the one that was discussed the most was middle school students or junior high students who get high school credit while they're in junior high or middle school. We don't know, again, no decisions have been made, but that's just kind of something that they've been thinking about. Elementary schools for Domain 4. Student attendance and other indicators as determined by the commissioner. If you guys have any ideas, we'd love to hear them. We've talked through so many different kind of indicators, but it's really difficult to get one that's going to indicate a path of post-secondary readiness at the elementary level. I mean, we've looked at things like participation in clubs or science fair or fitnessgram or just a number of different things. And we haven't been as successful as we would have liked to come up with one that's both reliable and one that we can reliably collect data on. So this is kind of something that we're wrestling with.
And Domain 4 cannot be star-based. So it cannot be standardized test-based. So domains 1, 2, and 3 are star-based, but domain 4 cannot. So when we've been talking to the groups and we're talking about what do you guys already do that's not standardized test-based, that's where the challenges come up with elementary schools.
Domain 5, community and student engagement. So I said already that these are the same community and student engagement ratings that you all have been submitting and grading yourself on ever since House Bill 5. So what districts do under House Bill 5 is districts assign to themselves and to each of their campuses a rating for each of the indicators in community and student engagement and an overall rating. Now these ratings are exemplary, recognized, acceptable, and unacceptable. We're going here. Okay, so these are the indicators that are for which a district has to assign to itself and its campuses a rating for each one of those categories and then an overall rating. Now, to make the first distinction between what I call HB5 community and student engagement ratings and HB 2804 community and student engagement ratings. With the HB5 ones, the ones we're talking about right now, it's districts assigning ratings to themselves and to their campuses. So the campuses, other than doing what they can to perform well in each of these indicators, they don't really have any, they're not assigning the rating to themselves. The districts are doing it under the HB5 plan. HB 2804 is a little bit different. Before the beginning of each school year, districts will choose 3 of these indicators that they're going to use to rate themselves for the purposes of accountability ratings. Campuses will choose 3 that they're going to use to grade themselves for the purpose of accountability ratings. When that information is submitted to TEA, it has to be accompanied by a description of how you're going to rate yourself and what indicators you're going to use or what methods you're going to use to rate yourself. Then the following spring, districts assign to themselves a grade or A, B, C, D, or F for those 3 indicators that they told us they were going to use at the beginning of the school year, and for an overall Domain 5 rating. Campuses do the same. They give themselves a rating of A, B, C, D, or F for the 3 indicators, and then for an overall Domain 5 rating. So the main differences are the HB5 one, the districts do all the work. HB 2804, campuses get to choose for themselves. Now, whether or not the districts let the campuses do that, that's kind of a local decision. But, you know, over here, you're rating on every single indicator, and you're rating exemplary, recognized, acceptable, unacceptable. And the HB5 community and student engagement ratings don't have to do with academic accountability. HB 2804, you're giving yourselves a grade of A, B, C, D, or F, and an overall domain rating, or overall rating for Domain 5. That does count in your accountability ratings. Weighting of the domains. Now, this is to determine the overall grade for a district or campus. You'll see domains 1, 2, and 3, the ones that all include star performance one way or another, is 55% of the overall rating. What's interesting about that is statute does not say how that 55% is supposed to be divided up among the 3 domains. They could each be 1/3 of 55%. I can't do the math that fast. It could, conceivably, domain 1 be 53% and domain 2 and 3 each be 1%. No decision has been made yet, but the point is there's a lot of flexibility there in deciding how to weight those first 3 domains to come up with the 55% of the overall grade. Domain 4, post-secondary readiness, is 35% of the overall grade. The only difference, except for, let me back up, it's 35% of the overall grade. For districts and high schools, it's 10% for graduation rate, 25% for the other indicators in Domain 4. Now, do you remember what I said about elementary schools and how many indicators they had in Domain 4? Remember, it was attendance and then any other indicators determined by the commissioner? Right now, it's just student attendance. We haven't figured out anything else yet. We have lots of people thinking about it and working on it, but we don't yet have anything else for elementary school. So that means at the moment, attendance would be 35% of an overall rating for an elementary school. I'm sure it's not going to stay that way, but that just kind of shows you kind of how this all fits together. And then Domain 5 is the community and student engagement ratings. This is the rating that districts assign to themselves and campuses assign to themselves, which means districts and campuses decide 10% of their overall rating. Inclusion of CTE in the new system. So we have the coherent sequence of CTE courses, and that's the same one that we're using now in Index 4. We have the industry certification. We're still collecting information on that. There's lots of decisions about what that's going to be and what they're going to mean and how they're going to be used. Quentin's going to talk about that in a few minutes. And then there's also the post-secondary readiness distinction designation that's still in statute. It's the same one that we use now. The legislature did not take distinction designations out for the 17-18 school year, so unless they do so during the upcoming legislative session, then not only will districts receive an A through F rating, there will also be distinction designations available. I want to talk about one more thing about CTE inclusion before I go to the next slide. So the Performance Reporting Division, we assign accountability ratings, but we also take data from that same data and kind of package it in different ways for different audiences, for different purposes. One of those, and I think it's the most comprehensive one, is called the Texas Performance Reporting System. And it's one of the last ones that we release because we have to get a whole bunch of, there's a lot more data in there. And it's really to help the public and districts kind of get a broader look. We report a lot of things in there and report them a lot of ways that aren't reported in accountability. So it just kind of gives a different look at district and campus performance. One of the things it does is it divides up, or it kind of carves out CTE students to show their performance on all of the indicators for the STAR. And how we determine these CTE students, now again, this isn't for accountability, this is just reporting. How we determine those students is we go back to this same code table, C142, and we take anyone coded 1, 2, or 3. So you remember for the coherent sequence, we took those students who were counted as 2 or 3. To determine the CTE students, just for the purpose of reporting their performance on STAR as a group, we take those students that are coded as 1, 2, or 3. Okay, implementation timeline of House Bill 2804. By December 1st of this year, we have to have the indicators for the A through F ratings adopted, or chosen. The word adopt is, Sometimes that's a tricky word, at least in legal terms. We have to have identified the indicators for the A through F ratings. On January 1st, we're to release a report to the legislature showing the rating that each district and campus would have received for domains 1 through 4 for the 2015-16 school year if the A through F ratings had been in place. Now, we've heard, or I've heard a lot from districts that are very concerned about this report. There's some things that everyone kind of needs to understand. It's not going to be we're assigning A through F ratings to you all, to districts or campuses. It's the legislature wants to see how this system is forming. I don't think I don't think it's just a coincidence that before the legislature implements A through F, or the year that's implemented, there's another legislative session. They're going to see this report, and they're going to see the recommendations of the Texas Commission of Next Generation Assessments and Accountability. I don't know that necessarily that anything is going to change. That's really kind of up to the legislature, but I think the fact that they're asking for this report, it kind of says that they're interested to see what it's going to look like. There are going to be some indicators that are lagging indicators that aren't going to be available for this report. For instance, the industry certification won't be available. That's a lagging indicator. We haven't started collecting that data yet. So when we release this report and it shows the ratings, we're going to have some narrative sections and some other things that just kind of help people understand that, you know, if you get a C on one of these domains, it doesn't necessarily mean, and, you know, there's still a lot of work to be done. It's just I'm calling it a soft provisional report. It's just to kind of see how things are shaping up. So, I mean, you know, if I were a superintendent, I would be nervous too, although there's really, I don't think, any reason to be. We're going to do everything we can to help people understand that this is just a provisional report, that they're not really to take anything from it with respect to how a campus or district had performed for the 15-16 school year, because we have accountability ratings that show that. The summer of 2017 is the first time that districts and campuses tell us those 3 community and student engagement indicators that will be used for Domain 5. Spring of 2018 is when districts and campuses will tell us their grades for those 3 indicators and for overall Domain 5. And then by August 15th, 2018, TEA assigns each district and campus an overall rating of A, B, C, and D or F, and a rating for, it says each domain, but it's really domains 1 through 4, because campuses and districts assign themselves a rating for Domain 5. And that's kind of the end of our prepared remarks. Are there any questions? We would be happy to answer them. We did notice, and maybe we're peeking around and we're not supposed to be looking. There is a sticky on that board over there that has a Domain 4 question. Oh, I memorized it. Yes.
We're like an accountability question. Yeah.
The question was, will the TSI assessment be included in Domain 5? And if so, will it count just for the year the student took it, or just the last year of high school? Forgive me if you wrote that and I got it a little bit wrong. What I'm going to do, or Heather, you want to take this one? Because it's, and here's why. I'm going to pass it off to her. Those decisions haven't been made for Domain 4. But TSIA is in Index 4. At the moment, it may be the same in Domain 4, so it would help you to understand how we do it in Index 4. And for that, I'm going to turn to Heather.
Okay, so currently, is everyone familiar with the TSI assessment before I just start? So this is the first year that we reported it in accountability, and we took the results that the College Board reported to the Higher Education Coordinating Board that reported to us, and we looked from June of 2011 to October of 2015. And we look at the graduates from 2014, 2015, because graduate indicators are a year lagging. And we looked through October of 2015. So those students who graduated in 2014, 2015, we would have captured their assessment from June of 2011 all the way through October of 2015. So that would give them time to have graduated, taken it during the summer, or taken it when they first got to college. So the question asked, would we capture it after they graduated? If they took it by October of 2015, we would have captured that and included it in Index 4. So if we do that the same way for Domain 4, yes, we would give them credit all the way through October after they graduate.
Any other questions? Yes, ma'am, you in the back?
So on the TSIA, then, what identifying factor do you need to track in from whether they're in high school or whether they're going, what's being used to connect them back?
I've got this one. That was a great challenge this year because it was not reported the same way. And so we actually went to the programmer who matched them up. And so they used student IDs first, and then they used first and last names and date of birth, and then they used like the first 3 or 4 letters of the last name and the first name. They went through multiple ways to match those students up. So if we can get a good ID, a good first, last name, and a date of birth, we can match that student up.
Yes, ma'am.
You mentioned you were going to use codes 1, 2, and 3 for students. We've been taught today that 3 has been taken away from the decision chart. So which data sources are we using to get that information, or which years is that coming from?
So that comes from the 101 record, which submission is that? It escapes me at the moment. So, well, first let me address 3 going away. We just won't use it anymore. I mean, we only used it for 1 year. We understand that it's not really used anymore, but I just said it because we used it for a year. And it's for the coherent sequence of students, we'll just use 2. Students that are coded 2, and then for the reporting on the CTE students as a group and how they performed on the STAR assessments, we'll just use 1 and 2. Yes, sir.
On domain 4 for middle and junior high school, it says students receiving instruction and preparing for high school, college, and career.
Yes.
Does that need to be a semester course? Does it need to be a year, or is it like one day you hand out the graduate PGP, they fill this out, and they have to be in the class?
To be honest, I don't feel qualified to give you an answer that you can take back to your districts and start telling people. I really believe that's a curriculum question. But what we'll do is, next slide, we have some contact information. There's an email address there. Send the question to the performance reporting email that will be on there, and we'll make sure it gets routed to the right person. Unless one of you all are comfortable taking that. Any other questions? Oh, yes, ma'am. Thank you.
And I'm going to go back to TSI. Are we going to be responsible for reporting
No.
TSI scores ever? Because we're testing kids at the 10th grade level for dual credit, well, even freshman level for early college high school. So,
I've had a very similar question to that before, and if you become a testing site, then I would encourage you to contact the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board to talk to them about how you're going to report that. Because if you're not reporting that out to anyone, then that information will not get to us. The Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board. They're like the TEA equivalent for colleges and universities.
Yes, ma'am.
so since the time frame that you're pulling and thinking about what they're saying, you might have a kid that takes the TSI more than once, pass one part, fail one part. How is that calculation being done for the school for kids taking multiple times?
They pull all of those results, and they have to meet it in reading and math, so it can crisscross across. It doesn't have to be at the same administration.
Yes, ma'am.
My question kind of tags on for on the certification side for certification. Are you looking for like seniors of that year to have earned certification that year, or earn a certification throughout their 4-year plan?
I don't know that decision has been made yet. Quentin may be able to give you a little bit more information. I'm inclined to say you'll take your annual it may be something like take annual graduates and did they earn an industry certification at any time. But again, decisions haven't been made yet, but that would fit with how things have been done in the past. Okay, well, here's the contact slide that I talked about, but I think you all have it in like your digital binders. So feel free to send us an email, and even if it's not a question we can answer, we're really pretty good at making sure that it gets to the right person. So thank you all very much.